Welcome back, everybody. I'm Sean LaFlock. I'm here with Scotty Hackness. This is Conversations, Fitness, Wellness, and Longevity. Scott, how goes it?
It goes good. How about you? Thirsty there?
I am thirsty. I am recovering still. I had 4 stitches put in my thumb last Thursday, and we had a bit of a cliffhanger coming off of our last episode, episode 80, by the way. Now we're in episode 81. I didn't really know if I'd be able to do the workout, which required you to do chest to bar pull-ups and thrusters. I wasn't necessarily as scared about being able to do the movements. It was more of accidentally whacking my thumb or pulling out my sutures or something like that. That would disturb the healing process. The last thing I wanted to do is lose my thumbnail or open up a wound and have to go get sutures again. So I was like, I'm not trying to qualify for the world championships here. I'm, just doing this for fun. So if I couldn't do it, it wouldn't be a big deal for me. But I tested it out Sunday. It felt pretty good. So I was like, all right, I'll do it on Monday. So I ended up doing 140 reps. It was god awfully painful. I broke up sets from actually, speaking of which, obviously we went over kind of like how to manage that workout if you were the mid-level CrossFitter versus elite CrossFitter. I think I started breaking up in the round of 12 into sixes. So I don't think I did a set larger than 6 on my thrusters. So I did actually, obviously I did the set of 9 unbroken. I did, 3, 3, 6, 6, 9, 9, then 5, 5, 5, or 6, 6, 5, 5, 5, and then 6, 6, 6, before going back to the bar for the 21. And then I did like a set of 6 and then just went unbroken for the rest of it and got another 8 reps. So 14 reps onto the thrusters after the round of 18, which was exactly the score that I got in 2012. I'm nothing without you, Scott. So, I think the only thing that could have changed is if I didn't hurt my thumb was kind of a little bit of the lead up into the workout itself, being a little bit sharper and more conditioned, kind of taking it easy for 3 or 4 days. Really didn't facilitate going into a chest to bar thruster workout with very high intensity for 7 minutes. But I was very happy with the performance of my athletes. In particular, Myra did 160 reps, 161 reps. On Friday, she did 158, which was 11 pull-ups into the round of 21. So she did an extra 3 reps, so she got 14 pull-ups into the round of 21. And I believe that little push there actually brought her into regionals for 2018. So she is
nice.
she's in regionals, pending a video review, and they're looking at 18.4, I believe, which was the handstand push-ups and deadlifts. So I don't think we have too much nervousness there. We measure it legit. She does all of her reps legit, so I'm not too nervous there. But great performance by her, and she really had to do a gut check to really push that. Wasn't nearly as sharp. Like her reps weren't as sharp. You could just tell she was just really digging into her adrenals on that last workout, just suffering, there's air just like that just sucked out of your body. But she did awesome. I did it just before her, so I knew exactly what she was going through, as a coach should, lead from the front, as they say. But the Open's over for me in particular. Now we've got to reload for her because she has the online qualifier for Masters in the middle of April. So we're looking at about 2 more weeks maybe for the online qualifier. And then from there, it's a build up to regionals. So we've got a lot of stuff to do. So it kind of leads us into
It creates kind of an interesting programming situation that you don't see too much, but where there's actually for an athlete that is in a master's category, but is still able to qualify for regionals in the Opens. Now you have sort of a 4th thing, because surely you want to do the qualifier to try to qualify. So even if you don't qualify through regionals, you'll still make the games as a masters. But now you have 4 events essentially to be prepped for.
It's unbelievable. It's you got to have some kind of resiliency to do it. Myra's definitely a different athlete, and I mean the online qualifier is 4 workouts over 5 days. So they release it Thursday or 4 days.
It's really 4.
think it's 4 days.
Four actual days. So it's 5 p.m. to 5
Yeah,
p.m., right?
exactly.
Friday,
Yeah.
Saturday,
Yeah.
Sunday,
So it's the
Monday.
same, basically the same thing as they do on as actually it should be the same time period you would have it on the open, but they give you 4 workouts. And I think last year what we did, and this is actually something that we brainstormed, was doing 2 workouts,
Mm-hmm.
and allowed us to do a recovery day, and then retest one of the workouts, which actually really helped out a lot. And I definitely think we'll reuse that same idea going forward, or
Mm-hmm.
maybe like a 2-1-1 and then a repeat based upon what the workouts are. Because one of the workouts was like a 3-minute workout, so we rested like a few hours and then just did another one.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah,
Yeah. Typically,
go ahead.
I was just, yeah, typically they've been something where it is possible to kind of strategize doing a couple of them in a session or a day without it being too unduly fatiguing.
Yep. And I think this dovetails nicely and transitions nicely and segues nicely into off-season training, or post-open training. I think for most athletes out there, they're now transitioning into their off-season training since the Open is over. So, Scotty, what are your thoughts on the Open is over and now you have 99% of your athletes moving into an off-season mode? What are some of the things you consider, and what is your approach there?
Yeah. The off season, I think, is super important. It's something that's, it's commonly neglected by so many. I mean, there's a couple of the self-coached open gym members we have here that are, hit the open and they're already just training hard,
Yeah.
just right back at it. And that is just not, not a long-term approach that's going to fare well. If you want longevity in the sport, you have to uh, know when to yoke back. And then also,
Yep.
there's a number of priorities, right? I mean, first of all, I mean, it depends on how much you put into it. I mean, if somebody that was really made it their effort, their focus for the whole year, and they really gave everything they had, especially if they were doing repeats, maybe if there's the stress of they were almost going to qualify for whether it's regionals or masters, right? This is a bigger impact on these folks than it is somebody that they trained CrossFit and then they decided to enter the opens, but it wasn't that much different than another hard WOD. That
Yep.
person's probably going to need less uh, specific recovery work. But with that said, I think taking a week or two to just do active stuff, no lifting, no gym stuff, no metcons, um, outdoor fun outdoors. Like one of my coaches is a longtime client of Max Elhag at Training Think Tank, and
Yep.
uh, she was chomping to train, but I was under strict orders to go outside and play. So she was just in here telling me how much fun she had last night. Went shooting guns and is going rock climbing today and is going on a bike trip. So after a few days, she kind of got into the mode and is starting to have fun with it. But
Yeah.
it's super important. I mean, even for diehard, folks go back and read the mantra of CrossFit in 100 words or whatever. It's regularly learn to play new sports.
Yep.
A thruster is not a new sport. Sorry.
Nope. You're absolutely
Yeah.
right.
So take some time to deload, but be active. And then when it is time to start training again, it should look a lot different than what it looked like prior to the opens and leading up to the opens. And this is the time you can fix imbalances created by the sport. And while it's designed to be something that covers more bases than most traditional sports, the fact is I see more and more every year I do this, that all sagittal plane based sports,
Mm-hmm.
all the lifting sports, and CrossFit fits in very nicely with powerlifting and bodybuilding, etc. In that it's very sagittal plane. You got to move in those other directions if you expect to move well and have longevity.
Yep.
Yeah. Rotational med ball tosses may never show up in the games, but you actually need to do them if you want to be able to do the things that you need to do to get in
Yeah.
the games. Be able to rotate, expand your rib cage, not have overactive compensation patterns shutting you down. And then there's other maybe strength imbalances, like we don't do a lot of horizontal pulling is one that I've long shifted people into doing more rowing work, whether supine or ring rows or whether weighted barbell rows, just depends, unilateral. And just kind of re-establishing the aerobic system, which can actually be somewhat damaged by high intensity effort. So long, slow type training mixed in there as well, which will also serve the purpose of shifting someone back into more of a parasympathetic state,
Yes.
which is we want.
Absolutely. It's actually very, like a million things kind of go through my head as I'm listening to that there. But a couple questions I have for you is, do you see that I know from myself in particular, but also the athletes I work with, do you see a hesitance and a nervousness when you say, on an individual program, you're not going to do anything in the gym for 2 weeks, 3 weeks, maybe even a month?
Yeah, yeah. People are so into training that taking that away and some and there's definitely cases where I've given people a certain amount that looks like something. I try to make it fit the profile of what we want to do as best as possible. But some
Mm-hmm.
people just yeah, it probably is psychologically better if they do something, even if physically it might not be the best thing for them.
Yep.
So I think as a a good intuitive coach, you have to go on a case by case situation a little bit. But with that said, I try to educate folks. And I think people that work with me, because I talk a lot about recovery, I think
Yep.
they're kind of already into that mindset at least a little
Mm,
bit,
yep.
or they probably wouldn't be working
They
with
know
me.
what they know what they're getting.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point. Um, the things that you brought up in terms of off-season training, some of the multiplanar movements and that kind of stuff. Um, do you do your assessments after that phase? In terms of like getting back into training, or do you even bother testing any analytics now?
I wouldn't test anything right away. I usually let a recovery
Yep.
phase elapse, and then I do like to do a handful of things to see where they are at post that. So this
Mm-hmm.
a lot of times this would be where I may look at certain mobility issues. I usually have a track list of things that for each person that we're kind of working on, see how they look after honestly neglecting them probably for a little while with
Yep.
competition. I mean, something you have to do, and then establish where our goals are for this upcoming season around those.
Yep.
And then those sorts of things will be a large focus in the early phase,
Mm-hmm.
shoring up
It's
mobility
actually
and movement
interesting.
restrictions.
A lot of the athletes that I work with who have mobility restrictions, who are constantly working on their mobility restrictions and constantly training. When you give them a week off of like pure deload, just stay out of the gym, have fun, whatever. When they get back in, it seems that their squats a little bit better, their overhead position might be a little bit better. They're just naturally a little less sympathetically charged, which allows
Mm-hmm.
them to find positions a little bit easier after a warm up. Do you find that as well?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Super common. Yeah,
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 so it's actually very interesting how we balance that out versus traditional training methodologies and actually what will allow them to progress forward. Like, how do we keep them in a more parasympathetic, malleable state, but also get training adaptations as well?
right. Yeah, that was an interesting thing that I hadn't even really thought about when I first started working with Mark McLaughlin, that coached me for a number of years.
Mm-hmm.
As we would do the kind of the high level omega wave assessments and knew where my autonomic nervous system was and et cetera. And he was never too concerned about mobility. Well, for one thing, I am pretty mobile in most
Yeah.
ways, to start with. But um, he's like, work on it if you feel you need to. But as we get you sorted out here, you're just not going to need to. It
Yeah.
will improve. And I didn't really get it at first, and then it's like,
Wow.
oh, yeah.
Did you
I
find
mean,
that it
well, it
would?
doesn't fix everything, but
Yeah.
yes, your movements certainly get a lot better. And it was then after that some things, because there's certain planes of my shoulder mobility are rather poor actually, and other ones are really good. It's kind of a weird thing, but I was actually able to make progress on the areas that
Yeah.
had been stuck forever. And this is why I can ride my bike again after all those years I
Mm.
couldn't. Um,
So, like, if we take a step back there, so obviously there is areas of mobility and movement that have, let's say, bony restrictions. Listen, like if you are bone on bone in your shoulder, like no amount of sympathetic work or management is going to help. On the opposite side of the spectrum, there you might have complete great joint movement, all that kind of stuff, but you have no control over it, and it is so stiff that you can't actually progress in the movement itself. So in that kind of case, managing nervous system is almost the most important thing, and you have to prioritize that if you want to actually create progress in those movement patterns. Would you agree?
Hmm. Yeah.
Wow, I didn't even think of it that way.
Yeah. Real sympathetically dominant people. I can't get out of that state.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't really matter too much what protocols you throw at them. You can't overcome it, or at least you can't overcome it to any lasting degree, right? You can do a aggressive protocol, call it whatever you want, long duration holds, extreme isometrics, FRC stuff, I loaded stretching, whatever. You may get momentary change, right? Oh, that looks great. Now we made some progress here in this 10 minutes we worked on this, and then check 10 minutes later and
Yeah.
gone.
I'm actually thinking
So,
about that in myself of going so far down the rabbit hole and just anecdotal shit about like sleep patterns and lack of progress in certain areas and it also thinking about my brother taking some steps back in his training because he was basically completely broken down. But especially in this off season, I'm gonna kind of slug away a little bit longer to kind of be able to push Myra in training and that kind of stuff. So being a training partner is important for the time being. Probably at least until regionals. So maybe stay in pretty decent shape for the next month or two, but obviously prioritize my own health. But from there, going into whatever I want to do next, I'm much more comfortable understanding that, listen, I'm not going to be a regional competitor, and in the off season, I don't need to push it. I can take 6 months and be like, all right, I'm going to take 6 months to just chill, enjoy life, let my nervous system calm down, let my adrenals recover. Work on stuff outside the gym. I'm actually doing a dance class with my fiance. I'm learning how to dance, and let me tell you, if you don't have multiplanar control, you ain't dancing. Okay? I
yeah,
mean, I have rhythm, but tell you right now, like doing salsa and stuff like that, if you are a 1 foot dominant person and you can't get off, like let's say your right foot, it's challenging. And I can see why dance in particular becomes such a valuable tool for not only older or younger people, like when you put a kid in dance, whether it's ballet or dance or modern dance or salsa, some kids will do, but like if for older individuals, either establishing or regaining some of that multiplanar directional movement in a fun, low, impact way.
yeah, yeah. I think it's super valuable, and all cultures do it just kind of organically. It's
Yeah.
out there. There's a reason. I think we're sort of meant to do it. And yeah, I think that's sort of why I love what I do on the bike so much, because it is.
It's
We would cringe to call it that just because of the way the sport is and the mentality. But if you think about it, it's basically doing that on a bike. So um, that's why I think it's so rewarding.
hmm I in looking at all cultures in particular, it's like almost like Americans don't have a traditional form of dance other than maybe line dancing. You
Yeah,
know,
I guess that is about the only truly American, or would hip hop dance have
Yeah, I mean, you know
originated
what?
here?
Like, I mean, obviously, all that is derived from African dance, but
Yeah,
and obviously, we're just a hodgepodge of different, just cultures and that kind of
yeah,
stuff. But it's
everything
not
here.
like you go to a wedding and everybody's doing this, right? If
Yeah. Hmm.
anything from Latin cultures, you have some kind of form of dance. Greek, European cultures, you have Irish step dance. You have all sorts of stuff, right?
Yeah.
But it's not like blue-blooded American is doing some kind of formal dance in at a wedding or going out and that kind of stuff. You kind of have to find like a dance club that has like salsa or Latin dance or something like that to kind of
Yeah,
get
you
some
find
kind of.
some other cultures dance
Yeah,
and do that.
exactly.
Yeah.
That being said, I think you're right. I mean, one of the things I've always wanted to do is be able to do break dancing or hip hop or that kind of stuff. So I think this is
Yeah.
just a stepping stone to that, and maybe just being able to interact and enjoy something with my fiance, but also getting out of the gym and trying new things. That I, as I was, swiping the credit card, I'm thinking to myself like, oh man, like I don't know if I could afford this. I'm like, I can't afford not to do this. I can't afford not to enjoy and to try new things and explore new places, because you never know where it might go. Like I might be prescribing people dance lessons next year. We'll see.
Hmm. Yeah, there's so much to learn, and we can learn, from so many um, different disciplines.
Yeah.
Things that you can employ and use, and you realize are valuable, or even just as an assessment tool for yourself. Right? You find, maybe this, that, and the other thing you can do fairly well, and whoa, what,
Yep.
why, and why can't this doesn't move, or I can't get into this hip over,
Yeah. And oh, that's a good
It's one
point.
thing to
So
be able to do that on, what are ultimately rather simplistic gym exercises, but now you try to take it to complicated dance movements and perform on rhythm. It'll show you up some stuff there if there's something going
yeah,
on, right?
and in a lot of ways, it could possibly create the connections that you couldn't make yourself, because now you're in a completely different state of mind. You're a completely different nervous system setting. Like your ego kind of dissolves a little bit, and you just forget for a second, and then all of a sudden you're like, okay, wow, now I can feel both feet, yada yada. And now maybe when you go back to things that have been inside the gym, you're like, oh, that's what this is supposed to feel like. And
Mm-hmm.
by allowing natural rhythm of your body to kind of take over, it almost allows the natural rhythm of your body to take over, and you move maybe in different ways than you had before.
Yeah, yeah,
So,
absolutely, yeah, and then just the other thing I see that it will lend to overall movement quality in all the gym-based exercises that you
mm-hmm.
perform. So I think I've probably talked about before. I do train a fair number of professional dancers and have for a long
Uh
time.
huh, uh huh.
Um, and I can tell you, they learn movements very quickly,
Yep.
even things that seem very unlike what a dancer might do, and they perform all the movements first go with what looks like a certain measure of smoothness and movement quality that you
Mm.
just don't see in people from any other background.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I could definitely see why that's the case, and I've heard many different strength and conditioning coaches and people in the game for quite some time saying kids should do either martial arts or dance or some kind of kinesthetic movements when they are young, and I could 100% buy into the fact that like dance in particular would be fantastic just for motor coordination and establishment of self-esteem as well,
Mm-hmm.
because just being in the class, like doing a one-on-one or with my fiance and a instructor, you go in there and you're nervous and you're like you're putting yourself out there and you're vulnerable, and to like actually be able to do it afterward, it gives you that boost. You know what I mean? You're able to there's that cause and effect, or the response of, okay, I'm in a vulnerable place, I'm courageous, and I get a payoff. And like there's that nice little sequence of establishing good thought patterns and practices that allow you to almost get good mental health as well, and establish
Mm-hmm.
good mental practice as well.
Yeah, yeah. I've done. My wife and I have done dance lessons, various forms, salsa and other things. And well, I wouldn't say I'm good at it. Um, there's definitely for me, it's definitely challenging my central nervous system. Like depending on the move it's done and the complexity. Like I can feel more fried coming out of that than lifting heavy stuff or
Yeah.
doing planche work or whatever.
Yep.
Um,
Yeah. Speaking of
but
which,
the growth you can potentially get
yes.
from some of that is
Speaking of
profound.
that, it's almost like you're like exhausted afterward, because part of you is like fighting the experience the whole time. There's a point of like obviously you let go and then you're part of the rhythm and you just move and you mess up. Okay, who cares, whatever. But like it's almost like this you're holding on to dear life kind of part of you, and then all of a sudden it's over and you're like, oh, now I can breathe. This is like
Mm-hmm.
my ego is fighting for life over here.
Well, you have to make you're trying to stay on task. It feels like you have a motor control decision to make
Yeah.
multiple times, almost a second,
Yep.
and you keep going at that. Whereas at least with, again, simplistic gym based exercises, right? It might be hard, but you don't have to sweat how your next rep of your deadlift is going to feel. It's going to feel just like the last one, just
Right.
maybe a tiny bit harder, and you just do it. And there isn't like a clock where you have some sort of emotional penalty if you miss the tempo exactly or something.
Yeah, right. So I mean, in a lot of ways, I think dance is much more challenging than anything we do in the gym. Like,
Yeah.
and you know, or what you do out on your bike, man. Like the complexity of the movements that you have to do. Like imagine doing snatches while juggling. That's basically what you do.
This is you don't have to deal with anyone else usually, though that sometimes
Sometimes can
I
happen, right?
yeah. Well, I mean, example, I was got a gig this week where I went down to a production studio and they had one of those mega phantom cams that do 1,000 frames a
Yeah,
second.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
And it was in a room where there was no spatial awareness for half the room because it was white floor, white walls, white ceiling, and it was smooth, so you can't see any corners. So it took away my visual. But
Wow.
then there was hot lights. They had a smoke machine running, and then a guy with this super expensive big cam would get up really close to me, like
Uh-huh.
literally my foot would go over the top of him while I'm spinning. Which so you do have this. There are
Yep.
cases you can get into variables, like
Yep.
this is going on. That was a very taxing 90 minutes for one, because it was hot and
Yep.
whatever, but I was a little fried coming out and dealing with all that other stuff at the same time.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. Yeah, and speaking of which, or kind of going back to the topic that we were talking about in terms of off-season training, um, are there any other considerations that you would have in the off-season now in terms of like nutrition? We kind of talked the lifestyle piece and a little bit of the training piece. Are there any kind of things that you would want to kind of look at nutritionally or health-wise?
Yeah, some just nutshell stuff there. I mean, we look, how has sleep been? Did it
Mm-hmm.
get worse? We need to get it back to its baseline, which that's just kind of a monitoring check-in tool. The nutritionally, I would tend to ramp calories up and try to get somebody more in give their body the fuel, the tools to rebuild hormones and
Mm, almost an
get the
overeating
adrenals and the
phase.
thyroid. I mean, we talk about the adrenals getting smashed from training, but really thyroid gets shut down more, and the
Yep.
adrenals can tend to be a slave to that. We need to, get some of that reverse T3 that slows the metabolism cleared out and get things cranking back up. Make sure digestion, if that can even take a hit over the course of a competition season. So kind of looking at getting those things, back, anti-inflammatory foods for the most part.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Do you tinker around with fasting at all during this time of year, or at least
I
protein
I
deloading?
used to. Um, I would tend to go maybe in the realm of protein deloading a little bit more. I mean, I think that most people have way too much stress to really benefit from fasting properly.
Yeah.
I think it's one of those things now is just overused, and people look at certain pieces of research while completely ignoring other things that happen and can be seen to happen in the trenches.
Yeah. I also think that like you said, it could be more stressful for some people. Um,
Mhm.
I think it's overhyped, to be honest with you.
Oh yeah,
Um, and I think the benefits are not long lasting.
yeah,
You know, as soon as you start eating again, I think everything goes back to kind of where it was. And I think more importantly, I think getting the gut biome and figuring out inflammation of the gut is a far more profound thing to do maybe this time of the year. Maybe this is the time that we would get some kind of MRT or get some blood work, baseline blood work
oh
done,
yeah.
and then see how you rebound, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, exactly. Any sort of rebuilding work, this would be the time to do any sort of tests and assessments like that and see
Yep.
where stuff's at, because, you may have to make significant modifications. And now that, assuming that we're talking that someone wants to train for the Open a year away, now's the time to tinker with that stuff, and they'll have plenty of time to, reap the benefits and make gains forward. But those things in particular, all kind of something we potentially want to look at.
Perfect. Okay, cool. So I think that's a good spot to pause for today. You got anything else there, Scotty?
No, I think that's about it.
Okay.
Finally getting a warm looking weekend here, so I'm going to finish my Friday activities and go ride.
Perfect, my man. Well, I'm Sean LaFlock. You can get me at Sean at CrossFitDiaryBeach.com.
I'm Scott Hagnes. You can get me Scott at CrossFitPortland.com.
Scotty, have an awesome ride, brother.
Yeah, you too, man.
Later, dude.
Take care.